While the driver drove, the CEO sat back, checking the time of the next board meeting, until he heard a child's voice, smooth as a melody and changing languages like a magician. David Harper, the cold and disciplined CEO of a tech empire, was a numbers-only man. Until that small table on the street corner and the voice of a 10-year-old boy, words flowing in 9 languages, struck a spark in David's frozen heart. At that moment, all David's plans came to a halt. Because that boy wasn't just selling bracelets, he was whispering the future. The city was alive with its usual rhythm, horns blaring, footsteps rushing, voices blending into a familiar hum. David Harper leaned against the window of his chauffeured car, the glass cool against his temple, his thoughts on a looming board meeting at Harper Solutions, the tech firm he'd built from a garage into a global name. At 42, David was a CEO who thrived on precision, his tailored suit and sharp gaze a shield against the chaos of the world outside. The traffic light ahead turned red, halting the car near a bustling sidewalk, where vendors hawked their wares, flowers, hot dogs, trinkets glinting in the afternoon sun. David's eyes drifted to the crowd, restless, until a voice caught him, clear and bright, cutting through the noise like a melody. "Bonjour, would you like a bracelet?" the voice said, switching seamlessly to another tongue. "Hola, senor, handmade, very special." Then in a lilting tone, "Konnichiwa, please take a look." David turned, his curiosity piqued, and saw a boy, no older than 10, standing by a small folding table, his dark hair messy under a worn cap, his brown eyes sparkling with energy. The boy's clothes were faded, his sneakers scuffed, but his smile was magnetic, drawing passers-by like moths to a flame. He held up a woven bracelet, his hands quick as he spoke to a tourist in fluent German, then pivoted to a woman in Mandarin, his words smooth and confident. David counted French, Spanish, Japanese, German, Mandarin, and now Italian, as the boy charmed a couple with a laugh. 9 languages at least, flowing from a kid who looked like he belonged in a schoolyard, not a city street. "Lisa," David said, glancing at his assistant in the front seat, her fingers pausing on her tablet. "Do you hear that kid? He's speaking more languages than half my board." Lisa leaned out the window, her eyes widening. "That's incredible," she said, her voice soft. "He's so young. How does he know all those?" David didn't answer, his gaze fixed on the boy, who was now juggling English and Arabic, his voice dancing between accents as he sold a bracelet to a man in a suit. The light turned green, but David raised a hand. "Wait," he said to the driver, his tone sharp. "Pull over." The car eased to the curb and David stepped out, the city's pulse wrapping around him. He approached the boy's table, his polished shoes out of place among the sidewalk's grit. The boy looked up, his smile unfaltering, and switched to English, his voice bright. "Hello, sir. Would you like a bracelet? I make them myself." David studied him, noting the calluses on his small hands, the way his eyes held a spark of defiance beneath the charm. "What's your name?" David asked, his voice gentler than he intended. "Ethan," the boy said, standing a little taller. "Ethan Torres." "How many languages do you speak, Ethan?" David asked, his curiosity burning. Ethan grinned, counting on his fingers. 9 so far, he said. "English, Spanish, French, German, Mandarin, Japanese, Italian, Arabic, and Portuguese. I'm learning Russian, but it's tricky." David's breath caught, the boy's ease with languages a marvel he couldn't grasp. "Oh, taught you?" he asked, leaning closer, the board meeting forgotten. "Tourists," Ethan said, his voice matter-of-fact. "I listen, I practice. They buy more when I speak their language." He shrugged, but his eyes flickered, a hint of something deeper. Pride maybe, or longing. "Where's your family?" David asked, glancing around, expecting a parent nearby. Ethan's smile faltered just for a second. "It's just me and my grandma," he said, nodding toward an older woman a few tables away, her hands sorting trinkets, her face lined with worry. "We take care of each other." David's chest tightened, the boy's words stirring a memory, a childhood of his own, scraping by, building dreams from nothing. He pulled out his wallet, buying a bracelet he didn't need, its colors bright in his hand. "Keep the change," he said, pressing $100 bill into Ethan's palm. Ethan's eyes widened, but he shook his head. "That's too much, sir," he said, trying to hand it back. "Keep it," David said, his voice firm but warm. "You earned it." Ethan hesitated, then nodded, his smile returning. "Thank you," he said, switching to French. For a new customer, his voice bright again. David returned to the car, the bracelet in his pocket, Ethan's voice echoing in his mind. Lisa watched him, her expression curious. "What are you thinking, David?" she asked, her voice. "Oh, I don't know yet," he said, his gaze on Ethan's table as the car pulled away. "But that kid's special. I can't just walk away." He leaned back, the city blurring outside, his thoughts racing. Ethan's talent was a spark, a challenge, a chance to do something real. David didn't know what, but the idea of letting that boy's gift fade on a street corner felt wrong, like a failure he couldn't accept. By the time they reached the office, he was already making calls, his voice urgent, his heart set on a plan that would shock everyone who knew him. The office of Harper Solutions was a sleek fortress of glass and steel, its walls lined with awards and screens flickering with data. David Harper sat at his desk, the city skyline a restless backdrop through the floor-to-ceiling windows. His fingers toyed with the woven bracelet Ethan had sold him yesterday, its bright threads a stark contrast to the polished. But the boy's voice, switching effortlessly between 9 languages on that crowded sidewalk, still echoed in his mind, a melody he couldn't shake. Ethan Torres, 10 years old, with scuffed sneakers and a smile that hid a world of grit, had stopped David in his tracks. The board meeting he'd been rushing to felt like a lifetime ago, its numbers and strategies dulled by the spark of Ethan's talent. David leaned back, his thoughts drifting to the boy's words. "It's just me and my grandma. We take care of each other." The image of Ethan's grandmother, her hands sorting trinkets, her face etched with worry, tugged at something deep, memories of his own childhood, patching together dreams in a cramped apartment, his mother working double shifts to keep them afloat. David had built Harper Solutions to escape that life, but Ethan's resilience, his gift, was a mirror to the hunger that had once driven him. "Lisa," he called, his voice sharp but warm, glancing at his assistant as she entered, her tablet in hand. "What did you find on that kid, Ethan Torres?" Lisa set the tablet down, her expression a mix of awe and concern. "Not much, but enough to start," she said, her voice soft. "Ethan's 10, lives with his grandmother, Rosa Torres, in a small apartment near the Market District. No record of parents, his mother passed when he was a baby, father's unknown. They've been on their own since. Ethan's not in school, no formal education, but he's been spotted at the street market for years, selling bracelets, speaking languages to tourists. Locals call him the polyglot kid. Social services has a file, but they haven't intervened." David's jaw tightened, the words "no formal education" hitting hard. "How does a kid like that learn 9 languages?" he asked, his voice low, almost to himself. "Self-taught," Lisa said, her eyes bright. "Tourists, vendors, maybe some library visits. Rosa's health isn't great, arthritis, some heart issues, so Ethan's their main earner." Sharp David. "People online mention him, little videos of him chatting in Mandarin or Arabic. He's a local legend, but no one stepped in to help." David's fingers stilled on the bracelet, Ethan's defiance flashing in his mind, the way he'd tried to return the $100 bill, his pride outweighing his need. "I want to meet his grandmother," he said, his tone resolute. "And I want to know what Ethan needs, school, support, whatever it takes." Lisa nodded, her fingers already tapping the tablet. "I'll set it up," she said. "But David, what are you planning? You're not just going to write a check, are you?" David's lips curved, a rare smile breaking through. "Not even close," he said, his voice carrying a spark of something new. "That kid's got a gift the world needs to see. I'm not letting it stay on a street corner." He stood, pacing to the window, the city sprawling below like a puzzle waiting to be solved. Ethan's talent wasn't just a curiosity, it was a call, a chance to do something bigger than quarterly profits. David's mind raced, ideas forming, each one bolder than the last. He called his lawyer, Mark, his voice urgent. "I need you to look into something," he said. "A program? Maybe a foundation for kids like Ethan, bright, overlooked, stuck on the margins. Start with education, language skills, global outreach. I want options by tomorrow." Mark's pause was brief, his tone cautious. "That's a big move, David," he said. "You're talking serious resources, time, maybe a shift in the company's focus. Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure," David said, his eyes on the bracelet, Ethan's voice a quiet hum. In his memory, "This isn't just about one kid. It's about what's possible." By evening, David drove to the Market District, the streets alive with vendors packing up Their stalls, the air thick with the scent of fried dough and spices. He spotted Ethan's table, the boy's cap bobbing as he chatted with a tourist in Japanese, his hands quick with a bracelet. Rosa stood nearby, her movements slow, her smile warm but tired. David approached, his presence drawing Ethan's gaze, the boy's eyes lighting up with recognition. Mr. Harper, Ethan said, his voice bright, switching to English. You're back. Want another bracelet? David chuckled, kneeling to meet his gaze, the sidewalk's energy fading around them. Maybe later, he said, his tone warm. I wanted to talk to you and your grandma. Is that okay? Ethan's smile faltered, his eyes flickering to Rosa, who shuffled over, her expression wary. What's this about? She asked, her voice thick with a Spanish accent, her hands resting on Ethan's shoulders. I'm David Harper, he said, rising, his voice gentle but direct. I met Ethan yesterday, heard him speak. He's incredible, Mrs. Torres. I run a company and I think I can help get him into school, support his talent, make things easier for you both. Rosa's eyes narrowed, her grip tightening on Ethan. We don't need pity, she said, her voice firm. Ethan and I manage fine. It's not pity, David said, his words earnest, his heart racing. It's respect. Ethan's gift could take him anywhere, but he needs a chance. I want to give him that if you'll let me. Ethan looked up at Rosa, his voice small. He's nice, abuela, he said. Maybe he can help with school. I'd like to learn more. Rosa's face softened, her eyes searching David's, weighing his intent. We'll listen, she said finally, her voice cautious. But no promises. David nodded, relief washing through him. They sat at a nearby bench, the market's noise a distant hum, and talked about Ethan's love for languages, Rosa's worries, the weight of their daily grind. Ethan's story spilled out, his voice bright as he described learning Portuguese from a vendor or German from a tourist's phrasebook. David listened, his resolve deepening, each word a piece of a plan he could barely articulate. As he left, Ethan pressed a new bracelet into his hand, its pattern intricate, his smile shy. For luck, he said, his eyes bright. David took it, his throat tight, the small gift a weight he carried back to his car. He called Lisa, his voice steady but urgent. Find a school, the best one for a kid like Ethan, he said. And get Mark working on that foundation. I want it real fast. Ethan's voice, his 9 languages, had lit a fire in David, one that would burn brighter than anything Harper Solutions had ever built. The market district was a patchwork of noise and color, its narrow streets alive with the chatter of vendors and the clink of coins. David Harper stood outside Rosa Torres's apartment building, its faded brick facade a quiet contrast to the city's gleam. The woven bracelet Ethan had given him was tucked in his pocket, its threads a reminder of the boy's spark, 9 languages flowing from a 10-year-old with scuffed sneakers and a grin that could light up the sidewalk. 2 days had passed since David met Rosa and Ethan at the market, their cautious agreement to hear him out a fragile thread he was determined to strengthen. His mind buzzed with plans, each one bolder than the last, but today was about understanding Ethan's world, not reshaping it. Rosa's apartment was on the 3rd floor, the stairwell smelling of fresh paint and spices. David knocked, his breath steady despite the weight of the moment. Rosa opened the door. Her gray hair pulled back, her eyes sharp but tired, her hands gripping a dish towel like a shield. Ethan peeked from behind her, his dark hair messy, his smile bright but curious. Mr. Harper, Ethan said, his voice warm, stepping forward. You came back. David crouched to his level, his grin genuine. Told you I would, he said, ruffling Ethan's hair. Got time to talk? Rosa gestured him inside, her voice cautious but not unkind. Come in, she said. But don't expect miracles. We've heard promises before. The living room was small, its furniture worn but loved, a quilt draped over the couch, a shelf crowded with photos and trinkets. A small table held Ethan's bracelets half-finished there, colors bright against the wood. David sat, his tailored jacket out of place, his gaze settling on a framed photo, Rosa with a younger Ethan, both smiling at a street fair, Ethan clutching a balloon shaped like a star. I appreciate you letting me come, David said, his voice soft, meeting Rosa's gaze. I can't stop thinking about Ethan, what he can do. I want to help, but I need to know what you need, what he needs. Rosa's lips pressed thin, her hands folding the towel with care. Ethan's a good boy, she said, her voice thick with pride and worry. He works hard, keeps us going. My health's not what it was, heart trouble, arthritis. He shouldn't have to carry that, but he does. School's been a dream, but we can't afford it, not with rent and bills. Ethan sat cross-legged on the floor, his fingers weaving a new bracelet, his voice quiet. I like learning, he said, not looking up. Languages are easy like puzzles. But Abuela needs me here, so I sell stuff. David's chest tightened, Ethan's words a mirror to his own childhood. Work before dreams, survival before hope. He leaned forward, his voice earnest. Ethan, you've got a gift, he said. Not just languages, but the way you see the world. I run a company and I think I can get you into a school, a good one where you can learn more, grow that gift. And Rosa, I want to make sure you're both okay, bills, healthcare, whatever it takes. Rosa's eyes narrowed, her voice sharp. Why us? She asked. You're a rich man, Mr. Harper. What's a street kid to you? David paused, the question cutting deep. He thought of his mother, her hands rough from cleaning houses, her belief in him, a fire that had built Harper Solutions. Because I was like Ethan once, he said, his voice raw. No money, big dreams, someone who believed in me. Ethan's talent is rare, but his heart is rarer. I can't walk away from that. Ethan's hands stilled, his eyes meeting David's, a flicker of hope breaking through. Rosa's expression softened, her shoulders easing, but her voice held steady. Words are easy, she said. Show us. David nodded, his resolve firm. I will, he said. Starting now. He pulled out his phone, calling Lisa, his voice brisk but warm. Get me the head of Bright Futures Academy, he said. I want Ethan enrolled, full scholarship as soon as possible. And find a doctor for Rosa, someone who specializes in heart conditions. Set it up this week. Lisa's voice was steady, her efficiency a comfort. On it, she said. Anything else? Yeah, David said, his eyes on Ethan. Tell Mark to speed up the foundation plans. I want a program for kids like Ethan, language, tech, whatever they're good at. Call it the Taurus Fund. Rosa's eyes widened, her voice soft. You'd name something after us? After Ethan, David said, his smile small but real. He's the spark. Ethan grinned, his fingers resuming their weave, the bracelet taking shape. That sounds cool, he said, his voice bright. Can I still sell my bracelets? David laughed, the sound easing the room's tension. You can do anything you want, he said. But maybe you'll teach me a few words in Mandarin first. Ethan's eyes lit up and he launched into a quick lesson, his voice dancing between English and Mandarin, his hands gesturing wildly. Rosa watched, her smile faint but warm, her guard not gone but softening. David stayed for an hour learning phrases, listening to Ethan's stories, how he'd picked up Japanese from a tourist's radio, how Arabic came from a vendor's prayers. Each word was a window into a mind that refused to be dimmed, a life David was determined to lift. As he left, Rosa handed him a small photo from the shelf, Ethan at a market stall, mid-laugh, speaking to a crowd. For you, she said, her voice quiet. So you remember why. David took it, his throat tight, the photo a weight in his hand. He drove back to his office, the city's lights a blur, Ethan's voice a steady hum in his heart. He called Mark again, his voice urgent. I want the Torres Fund to be global, he said. Find kids like Ethan everywhere. Asia, Africa, anywhere they're overlooked. We're not just funding schools, we're building futures. Mark's voice was cautious but intrigued. This is big, David, he said. It'll change Harper. Solutions maybe cost you control. You ready for that? I'm ready, David said, his eyes on the photo, Ethan's laugh a call he couldn't ignore. Ethan's 9 languages had started something, a fire that would burn far beyond a street corner, and David was all in. The city was a restless pulse, its streets weaving stories of hustle and hope. David Harper sat in his office at Harper Solutions, the skyline a glittering distraction beyond the glass. Small photo rested on his desk, Ethan Torres mid-laugh at a market stall, his dark eyes bright as he spoke to a crowd. It was a gift from Rosa, Ethan's grandmother, a reminder of why David had spent the last week turning his world upside down. Ethan's voice, switching between 9 languages with the ease of a song, had sparked something in him, a vision. Bigger than profits, a chance to change a life and maybe more. The Taurus Fund, a foundation to lift kids like Ethan, was taking shape, its blueprint scrawled in notes across his desk. each line a step toward a dream he could feel in his bones. 3 weeks had passed since David first heard Ethan on that crowded sidewalk, his 9 languages a marvel that stopped him cold. The boy's life, selling bracelets to support Rosa, learning languages from tourists, no school to nurture his gift, had become a call David couldn't ignore. His assistant, Lisa, had enrolled Ethan in Bright Futures Academy, a private school with a language program tailored for his talents, its tuition covered by a scholarship David funded himself. Rosa's heart condition was now under a specialist's care, her bills no longer a weight on Ethan's small shoulders. But David's plans stretched further, fueled by Ethan's spark in his own past, a childhood of scraping by, dreaming of a world that seemed out of reach. Lisa knocked, her tablet glowing with updates, her voice warm but brisk. Bright Futures called, she said, leaning against the doorframe. Ethan's first week was a hit. Teachers say he's soaking up everything, French literature, Mandarin grammar, even coding. Teaching the Spanish teachers slang from the market. David's lips curved, a smile breaking through his focus. That sounds like him, he said, his fingers brushing the photo. What else? Rosa's doctor appointment went well, Lisa said, her eyes softening. She's stable, grateful, but still wary of you. And Mark's got a draft for the Torres Fund. Initial funding for 10 kids. Language and tech programs, partnerships with schools in 3 states. He needs your sign-off to move forward. David nodded, his mind racing. The Torres Fund wasn't just a charity, it was a bridge, way to find kids like Ethan whose gifts were buried under circumstance. He'd already pitched it to his board, their skepticism sharp but wavering under his conviction. Tell Mark to set up a meeting with the board, he said. I want them to see Ethan, hear him. They'll get it then. Lisa hesitated, her voice cautious. David, this is moving fast, she said. The board's worried about costs, focus. Some think you're too invested in one kid. David's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed steady. It's not just one kid, he said. Ethan's proof of what's possible. If we don't invest in kids like him, we're failing. I'm not backing down. Lisa nodded, her smile small but real. I'll set it up, she said, turning to leave. David drove to the market that afternoon, the streets familiar now, their chaos a comfort. Ethan's stall was busy, the boy's cap bobbing as he spoke in Portuguese to a tourist, his hands quick with a bracelet. Rosa sat nearby, her movements slower but her smile brighter, a scarf around her shoulders. Ethan spotted David, his grin wide, and waved him over. Mr. Harper, he said, switching to English, his voice bright. You're back. I learned a new Russian word today, zvezda. Means star. David laughed, crouching beside him, the sidewalk's energy fading into the background. You're gonna run out of languages soon, he said, his tone warm. How's school? Ethan's eyes lit up, his words tumbling out. It's awesome, he said. We read this French poem and I knew half the words already. And coding's like a language but with numbers. Made a game yesterday. Rosa joined them, her voice soft but firm. He comes home talking non-stop, she said, her eyes on Ethan, pride shining through. School's good for him. Thank you, Mr. Harper. Call me David, he said, meeting her gaze, his voice earnest. And it's just the start. Working on something bigger for Ethan and kids like him. I'd like you both to come to my office next week, meet some people, share your story. Rosa's brow furrowed, her hands clasping. What kind of people? She asked, her tone cautious. Folks who can help make this real, David said, his voice steady. A program to find kids with talents like Ethan's, give them schools, teachers, a shot at the world. I'm calling it the Torres Fund after Ethan. Ethan's mouth dropped open, his voice a whisper. After me? David nodded, his smile soft. You started this, he said. Your voice, your languages. They're the spark. Rosa's eyes glistened, her voice low. You're serious, she said, more statement than question. Why do this for us? David paused, Ethan's photo flashing in his mind, his own past a quiet ache. Because I know what it's like to feel invisible, he said. My mom worked herself to the bone so I could dream. Ethan deserves that chance and so do others. I can't look away. Rosa studied him, her guard easing, and nodded. We'll come, she said, her voice firm. But Ethan's my heart. You protect him. Always, David said, his voice a vow. They spent the hour together, Ethan teaching David a Russian phrase, his laughter filling the air. David bought a new bracelet, its pattern bold, and slipped it onto his wrist beside the first, a quiet promise. As he left, Ethan ran after him, pressing a small notebook into his hand, its pages filled with words, phrases in 9 languages, scribbled in pencil. "For you," Ethan said, his smile shy. "So you can learn too." David took it, his throat tight, the notebook a weight he carried back to his car. He called Lisa, his voice urgent. "Get a venue for the Torres Fund launch," he said. "Something big. Public. I want Ethan there, speaking, showing the world what he can do. This is happening." Ethan's spark had become a fire, and David was ready to let it burn, a vision that would shock the city and beyond, built on the voice of a boy who spoke 9 languages. The city glowed under a summer sky, its skyline framing a stage where dreams found their voice. The Civic Center's grand hall hummed with energy, its marble floors catching the soft light of chandeliers. David Harper stood backstage, his suit sharp but his pulse quick, the woven bracelet on his wrist a steady reminder of why he was here. Tonight marked the launch of the Torres Fund, a foundation sparked by a boy's gift, Ethan Torres, whose ability to speak 9 languages had turned David's world upside down. The hall brimmed with faces, CEOs, educators, reporters, and families, all drawn by a story that had swept through the city. A screen glowed with Ethan's photo, his laugh bright, the words "The Torres Fund. Voices for Tomorrow" shining beside it. David's heart swelled, a mix of pride and hope, knowing Ethan was about to shine. A year had passed since David first heard Ethan's voice on a crowded sidewalk, weaving through 9 languages with a grin that stopped him cold. That 10-year-old selling bracelets to support his grandmother, Rosa, had taught himself a world of words from tourists and vendors. Now Ethan thrived at Bright Futures Academy, his scholarship a gift from David, his days filled with books, code, and dreams. Rosa's heart condition was managed by a specialist, her worries eased by David's support. The Torres Fund, named for Ethan, was real, its first program lifting 20 kids across the country, each with a spark waiting to burn bright. Tonight Ethan would speak, his story the heartbeat of a movement that had stunned the city and beyond. Lisa approached, her tablet dim, her smile warm. "We're ready," she said, her voice steady. "The board's here, donors too." Ethan's set, but Rosa's nervous. This crowd's bigger than anything she's seen. David nodded, his eyes catching Ethan backstage, his school uniform neat, a bright scarf tied by Rosa for luck. "I'll check on them," he said, his voice firm but gentle, crossing to where Ethan clutched his notebook, his language journal now brimming with words from 10 languages, Russian the newest. "Mr. Harper," Ethan said, his grin wide, his voice bright. "I'm gonna tell them about school. Maybe my bracelets too. Is that okay?" David crouched, his chuckle soft. "It's perfect," he said, meeting Ethan's gaze. "Just be yourself, Ethan. They'll love you." Rosa's hands fidgeted, her voice low. "He's so young for this," she said, her eyes on Ethan, pride wrestling with fear. "What if they don't see what we see?" "They will," David said, his voice sure, resting a hand on her shoulder. "Ethan's heart, your strength, it's why we're here. You've changed my life." Rosa's eyes softened, her smile small but real. "I doubted you at first, David," she said, her voice thick. "Not anymore." David's throat tightened, her trust a weight he carried proudly. He guided them to the stages. Edged the crowd's murmur a rising tide. The lights dimmed and David took the podium, his presence steady, his voice clear but warm, carrying a year's worth of change. "Good evening," he said, his gaze sweeping the hall. "I'm David Harper, CEO of Harper Solutions. A year ago I met a boy who showed me what matters. Ethan Torres, 10 years old, was selling bracelets on a street corner, speaking 9 languages he'd taught himself. His courage, his gift, inspired the Torres Fund, a foundation to find kids like Ethan, bright, overlooked, ready to shine, and give them a chance to soar. The crowd clapped, the sound swelling, and David stepped back, his hand outstretched. "Please welcome Ethan Torres," he said, his voice thick with pride. Ethan walked on stage, his scarf catching the light, his notebook in hand. The crowd stilled, their eyes on the boy who stood tall despite his small frame. He took a breath, his voice clear, his words simple but powerful. "Hi, I'm Ethan," he said, his smile growing. "I love languages because they bring people together. I learned them from tourists, vendors, anyone who'd share a word with me. My grandmother, Rosa, taught me to work hard, to keep going no matter what. He paused, his voice brightening. School gave me a chance to dream like the poets I read, the coders I learned from. I want other kids to have that chance to find their voice like I did. His tone warmed, his eyes scanning the crowd. We're a family tonight building a future, where every kid can shine. The crowd erupted, their applause a roar, many standing, their faces lit with awe. Ethan grinned, waving his notebook raised high. David joined him, his hand on Ethan's shoulder, his voice low. You nailed it, he said, his smile wide. Rosa stepped on stage, her eyes glistening, and hugged Ethan, the crowd's cheers soaring. David spoke again, his voice steady but alive. The Taurus Fund starts with 20 kids, but it's just the beginning, he said. We're going global, Asia, Africa, anywhere a child's gift needs a chance. This is Ethan's legacy, and it's ours to grow. The night unfolded with voices, a teacher praising Ethan's growth, a donor pledging millions, a girl from the fund's first cohort sharing her story of hope. David announced a global school network funded by Harper Solutions profits, a move that stunned the board. But won their support, Ethan's words the spark. Reporters crowded, their questions eager. The story spreading online, Ethan's speech clipped into videos that spread like wildfire. Months passed and Ethan flourished, his languages now 12, his coding earning a school prize. Rosa settled into a new apartment, her health strong, her evenings spent teaching Ethan her recipes. The Taurus Fund grew, its programs reaching 100 kids, each a light like Ethan. David stepped back from Harper Solutions, naming Lisa CEO, his heart now with the fund, his office lined with Ethan's bracelets and photos of kids whose lives had changed. One spring evening, David returned to the market, Ethan's old stall now a memory. Ethan ran up, his school bag bouncing, his voice bright. David, he said, handing over a new notebook, its pages filled with words. This is for you, every language I know, all in English, so you can learn too. David took it, his eyes stinging, and pulled Ethan into a hug. You're the star, kid, he said, his voice thick. They sat with Rosa on a bench, the cities hum a soft song. Ethan's 9 languages had started a fire, a legacy of voices that would echo far beyond a street corner. A dream David had built with a boy who spoke the world.